told you the world's most dangerous doll isn't locked away for your protection, but because the Vatican is still studying her. For decades, the story of Annabelle has captivated our collective nightmares. We have been told she is securely contained, kept safely behind holy glass, isolated from the world to prevent her dark evil from spreading. But what if that entire narrative is a carefully constructed lie? What if the real reason this seemingly innocent toy was never thrown into a blazing fire is deeply rooted in a massive, highly classified conspiracy orchestrated by the highest authorities of the Church? Prepare yourself, because the truth about Annabelle is far more terrifying than any Hollywood movie.
The official story always begins with paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. In the dimly lit, suffocating corners of their occult museum in Connecticut, surrounded by thousands of cursed artifacts, Annabelle sits as the undisputed crown jewel of the paranormal. Visitors were strictly warned never to touch the glass, never to mock the doll, and to treat the entity inside with absolute, unwavering respect. The Warrens famously claimed that the wooden enclosure and the Lord's Prayer were just enough to keep the demon at bay. But let us pause and ask a very logical question. If an object is truly a vessel for unimaginable demonic destruction, why keep it on public display at all?
Unlike the terrifying porcelain monstrosity we see in blockbuster movies, the real Annabelle is a vintage Raggedy Ann doll, made entirely of cloth, yarn, and button eyes. She looks incredibly mundane and harmless. Yet, this unassuming fabric shell is allegedly responsible for near-fatal accidents, severe psychological torment, and inexplicable physical attacks on those who provoked her. You would think the most rational, immediate solution to a possessed piece of cloth would be simple incineration. A few heavy drops of holy water, a struck match, and the nightmare permanently ends. But she was never burned. She was never destroyed. And the reason for that traces back to Rome.
People often wonder, why not just burn her? To understand the Vatican's absolute refusal to destroy Annabelle, we must look into the hidden laws of supernatural thermodynamics, heavily documented by the Church's elite exorcism division. In their ancient, locked texts, there is a strict rule regarding demonic attachment. Destroying the physical vessel does not magically destroy the entity inside. In fact, burning the doll would merely act as a violent release valve. The flames would consume the cloth and yarn, but the demonic force would be instantly unleashed into the immediate environment, violently seeking a new living host. Burning her wouldn't kill the demon, it would set it free.
However,
Preventing collateral damage is only half the truth. The rabbit hole goes much deeper than basic containment. Deep within the secret archives of the Vatican, accessible only to the highest-ranking cardinals, there are heavily classified files detailing a very different classification for Annabelle. She is not merely listed as a possessed object. She is categorized as a contained supernatural anomaly. To the covert, highly trained researchers within the church, Annabelle is the equivalent of a spiritual atomic bomb. She is a highly concentrated, incredibly rare form of dark energy that they are desperately trying to study, measure, and ultimately understand before it evolves.
The Church has a long, undocumented history of weaponizing, or at the very least, reverse engineering powerful spiritual relics. While they publicly preach faith and protection to the masses, a specialized shadow division operates out of sight, meticulously analyzing these terrifying artifacts. Annabelle provides a unique, entirely unprecedented opportunity for them. She is a stable, unbroken containment unit. The entity inside is incredibly hostile, yet somehow perfectly bound to a finite physical space. By keeping the doll intact, the Vatican has maintained a permanent, observable laboratory specimen of pure, unadulterated evil. Destroying her would mean destroying their greatest scientific asset.
This brings us to the regular, scheduled blessings. It is a well-known fact that a Catholic priest would visit the Warrens' property regularly to bless the containment box. The official public narrative tells us this was strictly to keep the demon weakened and subdued. But whistleblowers from within the underground occult research community suggest these visits were not merely simple blessings. They were highly calculated data collection missions. The visiting priests were allegedly monitoring the entity's fluctuating energy levels, reporting directly back to Rome. They were studying exactly how the demon reacts to different frequencies of prayer, holy artifacts, and human psychological stress. What exactly are they so desperate to study? According to leaked theological theories, the entity attached to Annabelle is not a standard, run-of-the-mill demon. It is believed to be something profoundly older, a primordial force of darkness that completely predates written human history. Unlike typical human spirits that haunt specific locations, or minor trickster demons that break objects, this entity displays a level of terrifying sentience, endless patience, and calculated malice that terrifies even the most seasoned demonologists. The Vatican knows that if they can somehow decode the nature of this primordial dark matter, they might unlock terrifying secrets about the very fabric of hell itself. Look very closely at the box she is kept in. It was built specifically by Ed Warren.
constructed using a highly specific combination of consecrated wood and glass, lined with ancient protective sigils and infused with continuous, powerful prayer. To the untrained eye, it is just a spooky display case. To the Vatican's researchers, it is a highly advanced spiritual Faraday gauge. It isolates the supernatural frequency of the doll, perfectly preventing the entity from directly manipulating the outside physical world, while still allowing it to be safely observed. It is not just a box. It is a high-tech prison cell designed for a being of pure, destructive energy. There is a growing, silent fear among these covert researchers, a terrifying fear of supernatural evolution. Demonic entities, much like biological viruses, can adapt over time. They learn from their immediate environment. By continuously throwing holy water, sacred relics, and prayers at it, the Church might be unintentionally forging a much stronger, more resilient entity. Some theoretical theologians argue that the Annabelle entity is slowly building a dangerous immunity to standard exorcism rites. The Vatican keeps her locked away not just to protect us from her wrath, but to closely monitor whether she is learning how to eventually bypass their most powerful spiritual defenses. Consider the horrifying concept of a spiritual battery. Certain fringe theories within the supernatural community propose that the Vatican views the Annabelle doll as a massive, unending reservoir of dark energy. In a modern world where the lines between quantum science and the supernatural are slowly blurring, the Church might be investigating if this dark energy can be harnessed, redirected, or even completely neutralized on a global scale. If they can definitively understand the mechanics of how this demon possesses a physical object so completely, they could theoretically develop the ultimate countermeasures against all forms of demonic possession worldwide. This directly explains the absolute, paralyzing terror surrounding the very idea of moving her. Whenever Annabelle was transported in the past, it required extreme protocols, specifically mapped routes, and continuous, unbroken prayer. Moving the doll is structurally akin to transporting highly unstable, leaking nuclear waste. A single mistake, a sudden stop, or a single drop of the box could instantly fracture the containment field. If the doll is ever physically compromised during transit, the entity would not just simply escape. It would explode outward, potentially possessing the nearest vulnerable mind with catastrophic, unprecedented violence that no single priest could stop. So, what is the ultimate endgame of this massive cover-up? The Vatican will never officially admit to this extreme level of supernatural espionage. On paper, the doll is just a
dangerous, cursed object left securely in the care of the Warrens' successors. But behind the heavy, reinforced steel doors of Rome's most restricted, heavily guarded vaults, hushed discussions about the ragdoll continue daily. They are patiently waiting for a massive breakthrough in spiritual technology, waiting for a day when they can finally neutralize the entity without risking a demonic outbreak or worse, waiting to see what the entity ultimately transforms into.
We blindly view Annabelle as the terrifying puppet and the demonic force as the invisible puppet master. But in this grand, sweeping conspiracy, the Vatican has positioned itself as the silent, calculating observer, watching the entire show from the shadows. They refuse to destroy her because mankind is fundamentally terrified of what it does not understand, yet overwhelmingly compelled to study it. The Raggedy Ann doll remains perfectly intact because her complete destruction would mean permanently losing the greatest, most terrifying window into the demonic realm that humanity has ever managed to capture alive.
The next time you see an image of that seemingly harmless cloth doll, remember this chilling truth. She is not sitting quietly in that box because she was defeated by humanity. She is sitting there because the highest authorities of faith and power on earth have decided that studying a contained apocalypse is worth the terrifying daily risk. Annabelle was never destroyed because her true, terrifying purpose is still unfolding in the dark, and we can only pray with everything we have that the holy glass holds long enough for them to find the answers right before she finally finds a way out.